Joining us now, TSN hockey analyst, former Vancouver Canuck, Mr. Frank Corrado. How you doing, Frank?
Good. How you guys doing?
Fantastic. Jeff's in for Blake today, so expect all the fastballs here from the one and only. Did you guys ever encounter each other in scrums?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. So I did this thing where I had a one-strike policy when I played hockey, and it was no one else's fault. But if something came on my feed that I didn't like, I just blocked the person. And I did it to a lot of people in Toronto, and now a lot of them are my colleagues, and I rely on them for quotes and tweets and all that kind of stuff. I can't confirm or deny that Jeff was one of those people in Vancouver. I'll have you know, you are not blocked anymore, and I like seeing your Twitter.
I will sleep well tonight.
What a guy. What a charmer. Frank Corrado. Frankie, we're counting down here to Philip Hronek's debut with the Vancouver Canucks. First things first, would you play him with Quinn Hughes, or would you have him anchor his own pair?
I would have him play with Quinn Hughes right away. I want to see what that looks like. I don't know. For me, I feel like I'm an eager guy where I have these nice pieces, and it's like, why not see what they look like together? And let's be honest, Ethan Bear, good defenseman, can move the puck well at times. It's not like that's a solidified pairing that you absolutely have to keep together. The other thing, too, when you think about putting players into the lineup who have missed a long period of time and, trying to find their feet on a new team, it would be pretty nice to play with a guy like Quinn Hughes who can move the puck that well. I feel like that solves a lot of problems for you, so he can kind of slide in and not have to have, like you talk about anchoring a pair. He doesn't feel like there's that element as well. He can almost defer to Hughes a little bit and get up to speed. So I would be really eager to play them together and see what that looks like and see, what kind of element does this guy bring with Quinn Hughes? They're going to move the puck really well. How are they going to defend together? There's some questions, but I feel like you'll have some answers pretty soon when you watch them play together.
And is that a short-term thing, Frank? Do you think NHL teams are best off loading up pairs, or when all things are perfect, if the Canucks have better defensemen in here, are you more for balancing the pairs out?
It really depends on the situation. I like having balance, but that being said, it really depends what kind of spot your team is in. I kind of go back to that Montreal Canadiens run to the playoffs where they relied on four defensemen a lot. They were playing those guys 20 minutes a night, and the third pair would eat some minutes here and there sparingly, and it got them to where they needed to go. Now, over the course of an 82-game season, I don't think that's sustainable. It's nice to have that balance, and it's nice to know that if your third pairing gets caught on the ice, you're not too much at risk, and you know that you can almost roll pairs at times and balance out your ice time that way. Where the Canucks are at right now, there's no reason for them to be overusing any one player or any one pair. I feel like you're in this position now where you got guys like Wolanin and Burroughs and Ethan Bear. You kind of just want to see what's everyone got. Can they handle something when they're tired on the ice or there's a bad matchup? You're in this trial run area. It really is you're just kind of playing with house money and seeing what you have with a lot of different things. So I would try a few different things. Nothing's set in stone. It's not like they're making a push for the playoffs. It's not like there's huge stakes. So I would try a few different things. And for the way the Canucks are built right now, yeah, you don't need to think about it as Hronek is playing with Hughes and we're loading up a pair. It's more like Hronek is playing with Hughes because hopefully in the future we have a second pair and a third pair that feels balanced. And now that's not a first pair where it's you feel like you're really loading up.
Frank, try to get us inside the head of Philip Hronek here. He's coming back off injury, and he's playing for a new team. When he got hurt, he was a Detroit Red Wing, and then he sat for a month there, processed the trade. As you said, there isn't a whole lot for the Canucks themselves to play for, but they're in this compressed portion of their schedule where they haven't had a whole lot of practice time, so he hasn't skated a ton with his team. What do you think he's trying to accomplish here in these final 12 games?
The biggest hurdle for him is going to be just getting up to speed from the injury. I've been traded. I've played on new teams before. Generally speaking, it's nice to have practice time for sure because you can iron some things out. But a lot of times you kind of fly into a new city. You got to play that night. And you'll sit down with one of the assistant coaches. Basically, he's going to have a whiteboard. And he's going to take you from the D zone to the offensive zone. And he's going to tell you, all right, this is what we do in the D zone. And he shows it on a whiteboard. And chances are you've seen it before because a lot of the stuff is pretty industry standard. And we know what works and doesn't work in hockey. Then the neutral zone, which is either a 1-2-2, a 1-3-1 that the LA Kings play, and a lot of teams are now going with like this 1-1-3 stack across the blue line, which I really like, actually. I think that's the best way to go. And then when you get into the offensive zone, there's a few cues, maybe assistant coach is going to tell you, okay, when you see a forward climbing up higher into the zone, once he gets to the hash marks, that's your cue to either dive in or maybe go across the blue line. It's pretty standard stuff. The difference will be face-off plays. Some teams have some intricacies as far as what they want to do on the face-offs, more in the offensive zone, and that's where you'll kind of have to pay attention a little bit. And like I said, it's nice to get the practice time, but even the way practices go in the NHL, they're 35 to 50 minutes. Like, it's not like we see a lot of 60-minute practices where they're touching on a million different things. So you kind of have to pick things up on the go. That's one of the challenges of being a player. And oftentimes, like when teams are practicing consistently, coaches will pick one message, one thing that they're seeing, and really hammer that home. It's not like this big buffet of things every single night or every single day at practice that you're trying to do. So it'll just be more about playing games, getting the reps, and feeling like you're comfortable enough to, make a few mistakes. Oh, I didn't know that, or I didn't realize that. But at the end of the day, like, you're kind of building something here towards the longer term than, being upset that, like, oh, I missed that in the D zone, or I missed that in the offensive zone. Like, there's quite a bit of leeway here for a new player.
Frank, it could have been your time to shine here the other night. I don't know, did you catch wind of the Noah Juleson activation injury in the moments leading up to warm-up? And then Kyle Burroughs, we're still not sure where he was, but he had to have a staffer park his car and sprint to get into uniform and make it to the opening lineup. You ever get hurt in activation?
No, I never got hurt in activation, but I had a moment where we were on the road in Chicago, and I was at Italy. Like stuffing my face and I'm pretty sure I was like mid-gelato, and I got a call from our team services guy, Brad Holland, at the time. He's like, can you get down to the United Center right now? Because someone's not feeling well or may have hurt something, and you got to take warm up. And I absolutely finished that gelato. And then I went down to the United Center and took warm up. And I was talking to the guy in warm up, like, you going to play here, man? Like, what do you think? And he's like, I think I'm good to go. And then, so halfway through warm-up, I was good. And then, I indulged in some popcorn after. But that was kind of like my moment where I was like, oh, and I was so fired up, too, because it was that year where I had played a game early in November. I didn't play until February later that year. I was just hoping, oh, man, this is my chance to get in a game. This is great. What a great story this would be. After the game, we could talk about how it was at Italy and then, maybe have a good game against Chicago. But obviously, it wasn't meant to be. But I have seen that. I've seen guys get hurt playing the pregame soccer, the two-touch soccer. It does happen from time to time. And I don't know. It's just it's injuries are one of those things. You obviously don't want them to happen, and they come when you least expect them, I guess.
That's a life lesson, though, right there. Never waste gelato.
No, finish the gelato.
Never
Gelato
waste the gelato.
Doesn't travel well. It doesn't hold, so you got to finish it in the moment. And if you're going to have an Italian feast, there are worse places to be than Chicago and Italy. We got a look at Vladislav Gavrikov as a LA King here this week, Frank. Already there is talk about him signing with the Canucks in the offseason as a UFA. He's a Dan Milstein client. There's a lot of those on the Vancouver Canucks. We don't know a lot about him because he played in Columbus and he came over from Russia late. But, give us your 2 cents on Vladislav Gavrikov, the big burly defenseman now with the LA Kings.
That's the thing that scares me about Connor Bedard and going to Columbus. Like, you see players that play for Columbus, and it doesn't matter who you are, whether you're on the West Coast, whether you're in Toronto. And we watch a lot of hockey here, and it's like, what actually is this guy? Because we don't know. We don't see him, right? Listen, this is what I'll say about Gavrikov. When he broke into the league, he was a little more of a puck mover, right? Like, I think he was more assertive in how he moves the puck and maybe a little more dynamic. And I think as time has gone on, he's turned himself into this pretty steady two-way guy, plays with a little bit of an edge, still has that puck-moving ability. But I think from watching him play a little bit over the last couple years, his game has transformed a little bit. And it's probably for the better. Like, I think he's more well-rounded than he ever was at this point. And it's interesting, right? Because it seems like Dan Milstein just has like this pipeline to the Canucks and Mikheyev and Kuzmenko, all these guys. So, and you see that throughout the league a little bit. Like I remember when I was, coming off injuries in the summer, and I would ask my agent, well, why does this team sign that guy? Why does this team sign that guy? He's like, oh, well, that team deals with a lot of Newport, or that team deals with a lot of CAA. And it does happen. So there's a trust and a comfort level between the two parties there. For me, that's a kind of player that fits where the Canucks are kind of trying to go in a way, because they've committed to this retool on the fly and bring in some players that are kind of in their prime and maybe have some upside. And ultimately, the biggest criticism of the team over the last year has been the blue line. And that's a guy, regardless of what the price would be or the cap and all that kind of stuff, he would help your blue line. So I know we take a lot of things into consideration as far as timeline and what things cost and salary cap, and for good reason, because there have been some terrible decisions over the years, and the criticism is just. But with where you're at, if you're pot committed into this situation, you need to keep doubling down, or else you're not going to see that through either. So for Gavrikov, he can move the puck, he can play some D. He's not a stud, but he's a good defenseman on the back end.
Lastly, Frank, as we know you're doing some CHL playoffs with TSN, Samuel Honzek, the Vancouver Giants forward. We know it's going to be Blazers and Giants in the first round here of the WHL. He's got some first-round buzz about him. He's a big Slovak, late birthday. Give us a little scouting report on this Giants forward, who's going to have to be pretty good if they're going to upset the heavily favored Kamloops Blazers.
He's going to have to be very good, and I think he will be. I was really impressed when I saw him play this season. Just a big, strong, powerful guy. Like, I like the base of his skating, where it seems like he's really able to utilize some power moves. He can play on the inside of the ice. I like the way he kind of protects the puck. He kind of reminded me of the way Kubalik in Detroit, who was really good in Chicago, the way he skates, but with a little more finesse and finish and playmaking ability. So I'm really impressed, and I think the thing going into this series, where he's going to play Kamloops, where that team is so stacked, and they have Stankoven and Zellweger and Fraser Mint and all these kind of guys that are really good WHL players. I think it's a great opportunity for him. Maybe the Giants can upset them, all that kind of stuff. But what if Honzek comes out of that series and people are saying, that guy was the best player in that series, right? I think that's the narrative that he wants to have built around him. And he'll kind of have the opportunity because he's going to play a ton of ice time. And B, it's you just have that nothing to lose attitude in that situation. And sometimes that does a player a lot of good. So he's an exciting player. Watching him play this year, I would be surprised if he wasn't a first-round pick, because I just think the package is really enticing. And I honestly would be surprised if he was in the second half of the first round. I think he's that good. I think he's in that mid-first round range. You probably got to talk to Craig Button a little more about that. But I really like the kind of player he is. He's the kind of guy that teams talk about acquiring, right? That big, strong, powerful forward that has some finesse. All right, if you're really about it, then maybe you want to pick that guy a little earlier than maybe the mock drafts will tell you.
Yeah, latest Craigslist has him 22nd, but he's had some helium here. So you wonder whether he does sneak into that first half. Frankie, much thanks. Thanks for this. Grazie, Frankie. You're free to finish your gelato. Okay?
Thank you. See you guys.